I thought you weren't gonna be here.
Come on now, I'm always here.
No,
I'm not here.
I thought you said at the.
I have to sit over here so I can see.
No, he
Yeah,
said
I thought
he
you
was.
said.
I said I was going to be here.
Oh, I thought you said you wasn't.
Every other meeting.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, maybe it's because I asked if you were gonna be virtual, Corey.
And I said no.
He's virtually
right.
virtual.
I'm virtually here.
Virtually here.
How are you?
Good, and yourself?
So was Chili Fest like the biggest, most monstrous event you had to deal with in a long
Other
time?
than that, those first couple Morgul's, that was the
Yeah.
biggest thing we've ever had.
How many people were they saying?
Like somewhere between 85, 110.
Holy crud balls, really?
Crud balls.
Yeah.
It looks like
I have
mean,
to clean my language up.
It
Yes.
looks like it.
How was the
Wow.
shuttle success? Like,
Good. I think at one point we had like 200 to 300 down there
Really?
200 to 300 cars?
in the shuttle. At
Wow.
its busiest. 2 fender benders.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? So were people
People were
supposed to be
a little,
parked in the
That's 'cause it had too
bike
many
lanes
drinks.
on Colton?
Westbound, yes. Eastbound, no.
Eastbound, no.
We
Okay.
had cars everywhere.
Yeah, I saw the ones on eastbound. I'm like, I don't think these are supposed to be here.
Starting to run into,
Yeah, no, so-
you want the event to grow, but you logistically have to make sure it can fit within the footprint. We're really starting to exceed community.
Yeah, wow.
Safeway is starting to, really enjoy that, I can tell. I drove through.
That was the one, when I got the call that the tow trucks were on its way. I was like, Joe, all right, let's get them out.
Yeah, that's not good.
No. And that's tough. That is tough on those businesses. We don't want.
Yeah.
My husband had to go get gas for the lawnmower and went over to Safeway to get gas. And they were like, "What are you doing here?" And they're like, "He's like, I'm going to the gas station." They're like,
Yeah.
"Make sure you just go to the gas station. You're not
That's
going
right.
to Chili Fest, are you?" I was like, "Seriously, I'm just
It
going to
gets, it's like that during the bike race, hey, George.
Yeah.
It's like that during the bike race too. It just gets, it's tough because you want those businesses to have.
Well, and
their parking.
there were a couple of people that I know that live in the Summit that actually went in. They went into Safeway, bought a bottle of water, then went to the Chili Fest and left their car in the Safeway
Yeah.
parking lot.
Lame.
I absolutely yelled at them. I said, "What is the deal? You live right there."
Yeah.
Well, I went to Safeway. I said, "Yeah, but do you
It
understand?"
was a long walk from Safeway.
Oh my gosh,
from
and
the
these were
Summit
like
there.
young people, they weren't old like me. I was just like, are you kidding me?
I drove through the Safeway parking lot.
What a
I took a
tight
right
person.
and I parked
I
right
was
by the
irritated.
dental place right there. I was like the third car. I was like, really? It was a good deal.
We tried, man, and trying to enforce like handicap parking was a nightmare because
Oh, wow. Yeah.
everybody, I don't have my sticker, I don't have this, I don't have that, so we had to get the sheriff to do all that for us.
Oh, good grief.
It's always tough to tell.
Does that event actually generate any money, or is it still subsidized?
We spend about $26,000 putting that in.
Really?
We make
To be fair, though,
$2,000.
I live right on the corner of Holyoke
Because
and
you're-
El Dorado,
you're-
and there was no one parked over there.
Your
Which was
booth?
great.
Really?
Totally open, so-
No.
So if you're a chamber member, you get your.
Which, is right across from
really?
community park, like there's a,
Like if
Yeah.
you're not, it's only
Trail
like
right
50
there.
bucks or something.
Right.
I know,
it's
some
really
people probably
cheap.
don't
People
know,
pay
that
it.
they,
Yeah.
They
No,
don't
but I'm
think,
saying
that-
on the
well,
bike
well,
ride
every
charge,
other
you
event
still
people
get
park there, but for
paid.
Chili Fest, they didn't.
heaven forbid they'd have to walk all the way over
It's
there.
at least a quarter of a block.
Well, I parked on Rock Creek Circle and like.
Yeah,
I
which
know,
is
it's kind of
fine.
awful that I parked on Rock Creek Circle and I live right up the hill, but that's because I was
No, but
going
that's
somewhere.
okay. It's
I
the
walk-
people who live in the Summit who parked in the Safeway park.
I walk down every year to the 4th of July, and every year on the way back, the kids whine so much on that 1
They
mile
do.
uphill.
They do, don't
1
they?
mile uphill, and it's like it takes them like 30,
Well, I think
45
you're
minutes to
right.
walk back.
By
But
the
you
light.
are
Oh my God.
timing it with enough candy. I mean,
Oh,
come on.
Trust me, they got sugared up, and then by the time they walked home, they were
It was a
good.
crash.
Yeah.
They were crashing. They lay out.
Sandy, can you pass the?
Sorry, Sandy. I was asleep at the switch.
That's all right, I was asleep, sitting in a chair.
All right.
Anything, is Corbett,
I have not heard from Corbett. I know I said Ron's gonna be late. Aaron's not gonna be here.
I can't remember whether Corbett said he was gonna be here
I
Saturday.
don't
or not.
recall.
He didn't say anything.
He must be.
Yeah.
He must not be because
It's a
he
hard
said.
time with that, don't
And
they?
even if she
I
did,
was
you wouldn't
so
get it right.
tired that day.
Oh,
I
did
mean,
he show up after I left?
Yeah. I didn't even.
To
I left
me-
while you were
I didn't
talking,
recognize
Clint.
Yeah. Holy Toledo. I mean, I stayed, afterward, I went and got a beer. And then I got back to my house.
It all
I
went
sat on my
downhill from
sofa
there.
and I never moved. I was supposed to go to 2 parties that night and didn't make it to either one. I was beat.
So we have a short evening, it looks like.
Yes, it's a short meeting. All right, so let's call to order this meeting of PROSTAC, September 16th, 2015. Aaron Atwell is absent and Ron Summer is late. Chris Hansen, our trustee, is absent, and we are waiting on Corbett Honinger. All right, so we forgot to last meeting do introductions, so, I mean, Corbett's not here, but, so Lindsay Boyle, she was here last month.
Hi, everyone.
She was of the 2 appointees from 2 months ago. And then George Kuffner
Yep, hello.
just got appointed on Monday, so
Welcome, George.
Hello.
I don't know if either of you want to say anything to it. We can go around and introduce ourselves.
I'm starting. I'm Daryl McCool.
I'm Sandy Hammerly.
And I'm Corey Oxner.
Peter Bodman. Sandy's vice chair, I'm chair.
Oh,
sorry.
I should have worn my badge.
I found one
Does it
after I
say
got
it on
home.
it?
It does, but it doesn't say PROSTAC.
Oh,
So
just
just
the
as
vice
vice
chair.
chair?
It just
Oh, you
says
were just
vice chair.
You were vice
Yeah.
You
chair.
could claim to be vice chair of a variety of
I
different
can be
things.
vice chair of anything I want in
Even
the
in
town of
real-
Superior.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
We can,
I could make up my own committee.
I can get PROSTAC.
It's hilarious.
I've
known
because-
that on my
Because I
one.
have one that says PROSTAC, then I have one that says PROSTAC member in quotes.
In quotes, like you're not really a member,
Yeah,
you're
well,
a member.
it's hilarious. And then I have one that says Parks, Recreation, Open Space Advisory Committee, you know. And then I
It's
have
a really long one.
vice chairman. But I have, it doesn't say I'm what.
You
You've got
noticed
the chair too, right?
The OSAC members on Saturday were wearing their chair and vice chair. Just, it didn't say OSAC chair, it just said
Yeah.
chair and vice chair.
So we can be chair of anything
So yeah, they
we
could have
want.
been of any committee.
We could be chair of Chili Pass, vice
You
chair.
could just have a chair.
We could just have a chair.
Okay,
Just
so,
move.
all right, public comment, nobody here. So we'll move on to item number 3, discussion, Chili Fest debrief. Kind of just gave it to us, but anything else to add?
No, it was a huge event. I think it went really well. Parking is obviously something we're gonna have to address. The event has gotten significantly bigger once we added the beer festival piece of it. There's always been the assumption that when town center's built, the beer festival will go there. That's the Rotary, that's their intention, it has been their intention all along. But we'll definitely need to make some logistical changes.
Will Chili Fest go with Beer Fest?
Probably not. I think we'd get significant pushback if we moved it anywhere but right smack in the middle of town. And we have talked about, you know, do you try to bring in other elements? We've talked about doing a barbecue competition and things like that. But right now, we're bursting at the seams. But it went really well, other than parking.
So we don't get any revenue from the Beer Fest part?
We do.
Oh, we do,
We
okay.
do. So the way, when the town used to do the beer, we can't collect revenue, we can't keep revenue from alcohol sales, so we turned that over to Boulder County Incident Management, which helps do things like, you know, buy items during floods and fires and things like that.
Mhm.
So when the Rotary wanted to do the partnership, we said, look, you have to contribute the same $3,000 to $4,000 that we were always making on beer sales, had to go to a local charity. The good thing about the Rotary Club is they don't have the same restrictions, so they actually can give those money to things like, they can pick the school, right? So they can actually, last year I think they contributed to each school's library in Superior. They can contribute to, you know, like the Coal Creek Meals on Wheels, whereas a government, we really can't. We can't give it to a specific school, we can give it to the school district. So for us, we felt like it was a good move because it actually kept the money a little bit more in town. And not having to deal with the alcohol sales is awesome. because that takes almost the entire staff, because we have to play by a completely separate set of rules in the government, so,
So
But
then-
we do not make, the only thing that will make any money is when we sell the chili kits or the bowls. But, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket.
So like if you went to the old Chicago booth and bought beer,
Right.
then Rotary was managing that?
That went to the Rotary.
Those ticket sales went, okay.
And
Yeah,
that
I
was-
just was hoping we made some money off of it, so.
The only thing that we'll make a little bit is if you're a booth that's not affiliated with the chamber, you have to pay.
Okay.
And that's a pretty small number. And then those tasting, this year we did the bowls because the amount of trash that was being produced, even though it's supposed to be all eco-friendly, those little paper tasting cups, it's just a mess. And we actually have heard feedback for years about that not being a good way to do it. So we bought the cups. The cups were $2.50 each. We sold them for $5. But like I said, the overall budget for that, not including staff time, is about $26,000. So that's we still do most of it for free, which is
And we don't have any idea numbers that are not Superior residents, right?
no. I do know that the Rotary Club paid to have our postcards sent to parts of Louisville because they're the Boulder Valley Rotary Club. So I don't know exactly which parts of Louisville, but I know that, they cut us a check to print more of those and have those sent out.
So
Were they
those
keeping, I'm sorry, were they keeping different numbers then? So like they were selling tickets, do they know addresses or they just know tickets?
You know what, they might, because I think they were doing theirs online, so I'm sure there was some, I don't even know what kind of,
It'd just be interesting statistically to know how,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of system that they use, like a PayPal to do a pre-registration, or, I do know that they have the ability to do some kind of on-site credit card transactions. But we draft up an agreement every year that's pretty specific, that says that's your world, this is our world. They pay for all the extra cops. They pay for extra restrooms, so anything above and beyond what we had normally done in the past, they pay for it, and they've been really good about paying for it. And then any damages on the field, you guys kind of missed my temper tantrum about the field, and they're accountable for any damages that happen to that field.
And what did they do?
Oh, it's just rutting it up, and if we have any busted sprinkler heads from those trucks driving around.
Which they must have done,
They did.
because,
Based upon your
because
facial
you,
expression.
because you
Those are
had
easy to
a little
change,
temper
come on.
tantrum? Okay.
Well, it's stuff that, so ideally, everybody loads in on the warning track and drives around. But the second somebody shows up late and that gets out of order, then you get vehicles that back up. And then you get one person who's impatient that'll shoot across, and before you know it, so it's just something to work on. Or we know that it's gonna happen. It may be an unrealistic
And just,
expectation.
just saying, we're billing you for
Yep.
broken
And those guys have been great, so they were absolutely willing to pay for whatever comes up.
Just from being at the booth, there was a few Louisville residents that stopped by and were talking
Yeah.
about the trails and stuff. Just
Good.
the amount of people that asked about the crossing no matter which crossing, which underpass or overpass, and when they open and ties between Superior and Louisville. So there was a lot of
Good.
feedback about that.
And so I guess we can just add a little bit. So our participation with the booth, for those who weren't there, was we did a joint booth with PROSTAC. There was a big map of the trails in town and then the proposed trails in town. And PROSTAC had a little questionnaire that they were asking people a series of questions related to, what trails do you use currently? What trails would you like to see? What, do you prefer hard surface, soft surface? They were mostly doing it themselves, so hopefully they'll share some of that with us. But I mean, just from, overhearing a number of those conversations, people, they seem to really like the trails we have, and the the ones that they were mostly talking about wanting to see added dealt with the open space, the Boulder County open space, I should really say, not town. And so I don't know if that was more, because OSAC was kind of asking more about the open space, but those were the proposed trails that were really being talked about most, rather than the little interconnecting stuff that we're dealing with mostly in town. You know, there's a fair amount of kind of educating on Davidson Mesa underpass and how that's gonna connect into everything, 36 Bikeway, Davidson Mesa, how the proposed trails that might come off of that. But overall, I mean, everyone was really positive. I mean, there wasn't a lot of, a couple people when they talked about, when they tried to talk about Coyote Ridge, kind of asked about what we've talked about before is the education of south of Colton. We're asking about, like, hey, all those trails up there, and they're talking about all the social trails. They're not really talking about what the town manages. So, you know, the people really wanting to see that stuff brought into the town's fold and, you know, maintained properly. But yeah, right now, people are clearly using those trails and not necessarily realizing that they're social trails. They're town trails.
Yeah, I was gonna say, one of the things that did pop up though, several people came up and asked about what was gonna happen with trails around town center. Now that they see dirt moving around, they're asking, you know, and obviously, we didn't really have any information there, but if we're exhibiting again, it might be worthwhile to at least have something that kind of shows what the proposal was, or any of the connectors, or anything like that, because there was lots of misinformation kind of floating around. And
yeah, I think there was confusion over how it's going to tie into the bikeway, how town center is going to tie. I mean, we know that it's going to basically complete the bikeway connection on our side, but I don't think OSAC even really understood how that stuff's all going to connect in the end. So certainly some education there could be used.
Well, we understood the enhancements of the park kind of along the river there, you know, along Coal Creek, and then they were asking more, how does it transition even to the south further and up into the community to the south? You know, is there connectivity there, those type of things. There was quite a few people that, yeah, like you said, the Boulder County open space and out on 128 and how we connect from the Colton trailhead and that eastern loop that we talked about that kind of went along the Caslin and then out to 128. There's a bunch of people commented on that as another alternative, but, you know, understanding where does it go to, you know, we're like, well, it goes out into the Boulder County open space. That's a proposed, but we don't really know full connectivity. So there was some of that.
But yeah, I mean, we'll have to, you know, like we talked about last month, continue some discussion with OSAC to develop a more formal survey questionnaire regarding trails. So hopefully we can start getting, you know, maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, start getting a survey out to the public to try to get a little bit more hard data, you know, feedback on these proposed trails, so that going into next year's work plan, we have a little bit more information to work with.
And hopefully as FDPs come forward, we'll have trail alignments on them, and I'll absolutely share those with the group.
And on the proposed trail map that we had there, we also had the underpass, the new one on, what is that?
For Davidson Mesa.
Davidson Mesa, yeah, that Davidson Mesa connection. We had the one that ran right along the backside of the community, right on the far eastern, yeah, right along Sagamore. So there was that other potential connectivity through Louisville's water plant. You know, so it's just where is that going, and you know where we stand with that trail too.
So the connection from Davidson Mesa to Mayhopper Single Tree
Yeah.
behind the water treatment plant?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
But it was the one.
our proposed, so there's what Louisville is proposing, and then there's what we're proposing.
Right.
What we're proposing is you know, further east to kind of, just on the west side of Costco. And
Sure.
It'll go along there, and it'll jump behind those properties and run behind
So
Sagamore.
just behind the new storage facility that's over
Right.
there?
It'll run back there.
Off
and
the
then-
railroad bridge or where? on the railroad grade, the original railroad grade that went back there behind Sagamore? Are we talking for the west? Or are we talking farther north?
All of it,
All of the whole railroad grade?
the whole railroad.
Where they cut all that railroad grade out, that dumps out right in front of the Kufner subdivision?
Yeah,
They dumped out there?
yeah.
Or would it dump out on top, the tie-in up on top?
There's two different proposals out there. One,
Okay,
all the way down,
yeah,
basically on Coal Creek.
gotcha.
And then there's 4 or 5, and I'll have to, I can follow up with the group because I don't have the map with me, but one is set to go all the way down to 66
Okay.
and then up.
Okay.
One is to use the community ditch maintenance road,
Huh.
which,
Farmer's ditch?
right. One is a cut across at the top of the hill. I guess that'd be on the east side of Louisville's water treatment facility, so you would almost just
Yeah.
cut.
So in between the houses and the water treatment plant there?
Right, and then there's a trail proposal to run right north of the water treatment facility.
Yeah.
They would move their fence line back, install a retaining wall,
Gotcha.
and then cut right as soon as they get to the west end of their property, then shoot across. There's the proposal to bring it all the way down to 76, and then there's the proposal to drop it behind Sagamore. We have heard some rumblings from the county that railroad grade, as you get closer to 36, is
Kinda
prob-
weak.
and it's really aggressive, and there would be some drainage issues. So now that trail's kind of been out there, I know that our group has had it on the 5-year trails plan for a while. The county is looking at it. The one thing that was mentioned is there's some topography issues with actually making that happen. And then maybe the preference is coming down to 76, and either going in front of Sagamore on a dedicated bike lane. That way, I mean,
Better safety.
Your trail expenses, there really are none. We look at maybe doing some kind of bike lane on 76.
Of course.
So that's, it's constantly evolving, as this, and then everybody's curious about the actual Davidson Mesa. How do you get across Marshall Road? It's not the counties, it's not Louisville's, it's not Superior's, it's CDOT's road. So trying to get all the jurisdictions to work together, and then what do you do with it when you're on the other side? So there's a lot of logistics that are gonna go into this one. But do know that the conversations about that trail behind Sagamore, it looks like they're starting to run into some grade issues.
There's some serious grade issues. I know that property very well. I raised cattle on that property from the age of, since I was probably born in 84. I was born in 84, so I remember my family grazing cattle back there behind Sagamore from the age of 3 to the age of 19. I know everything about that property. I know where the mine shafts are. I know there's an underground river down there that they buried a house in. They can walk you right to it.
And I think, as this evolves out, it'll be interesting to see what the county's preference in terms of, based off their biological impact studies on what's out there, but it sounds like the trail's in the works, which would be great.
You're talking about the Louisville, the one along the Marshall Road, right?
Wherever it is, whether it's down to 66th Street or to 76th Street. But I think once that connection under the highway's open,
Yeah. They want it to go
they're
somewhere.
gonna want it to go somewhere.
So is there continued talk about safety and,
Playing Frogger on that
yeah, I mean,
road?
if they've got 5 options of trail plans, what's their 5 options for getting people safely across?
See, and that's all up to CDOT, because it's CDOT's property.
That's all up to CDOT?
Because it's their road,
We should propose a gondola.
so.
Oh, zip lining.
Yes, good
Yeah.
That
idea.
actually would be cool.
That went over well.
So that's gonna be a
Literally.
huge piece of this puzzle, is figuring out how that connects.
Yeah.
Or does it use what will be our Dr. Cog trail, come back towards town and then go, at 76th Street, or something along those lines. And you bring people into Superior before they can get onto open space.
I think that's the less critical piece, it's the, how do we get across the road? I mean, the road's sketchy as it is right now.
Well, and that's what we've talked
Yeah.
about, not to get too far off topic, but that's what, I can't remember if we talked about this last
It was a
month,
few
but
months ago.
at least in the last couple months, we talked about one possibility that would serve our town best, not necessarily Louisville, would be because we have that Dr. Cog Trail that will go in between the park and ride and Davidson Mesa underpass. So it'll be heading east from Davidson Mesa. You could come under Davidson Mesa underpass, head east on the Dr. Cog to 76, where town could potentially put a traffic light. So then you would have a protected crossing
Yeah.
Or some sort
there.
of crossing.
It's a good idea. If we
And
can have
then-
an
and
underpass,
then-
that's the next best thing.
Like Patrick said, we would be diverting the people into the town of Superior before they got into the open space. But Louisville might not necessarily like that because they would be going east before they can go west. So, but we talked about that as probably being the best thing for our town, would be to get them in, safely onto 76.
And we did that with a site visit. We stopped out there at the underpass and just kind of looked around at where's the best crossing points. And that's what it looked like, once traffic got around the corner, you can actually see a crossing at 76, where
Yeah.
right now it's on a corner and you don't really have a good kind of place to put it.
I agree.
So, anyway.
All right, so I think that's, it's a pretty good debrief on the Chili Fest. So we'll move on to item 4, discussion Hoshkin Harris Reservoir viewing area. Do you have that map?
I do.
Patrick? So Patrick was able to go back and find out the agreement with the county on where a viewing area could go. And basically it is that corner.
The little strip.
That little, what is it, Shamrock?
Yeah,
So
so,
88th and Shamrock, that northeast corner,
So the little tiny piece of grass in town.
that's already irrigated
Yeah.
grass, basically.
and maybe a little bit further, but here's,
Anything.
I've been watching every time I've driven past it, I'm like, craning my head out the window.
here's the specific language. It's pretty specific to the 88th Street and Shamrock Drive. There is a little bit of,
So the northeastern corner of that intersection.
highlighted here for you.
So the agreement as it is now, we would not really be allowed onto any of the Boulder County property that makes up the surrounding of the reservoir.
So Patrick, did you talk to Boulder County since our last meeting about whether or not we could create a viewing bridge that was into Boulder County land?
Yeah, that's,
And they said,
that
No,
this
thank
is
you.
this is the agreement.
Okay.
This was the predetermined agreement. You can operate within that corner. And here's the exhibit from the actual contract. So they were pretty specific in that this is what they were willing to work with when this whole thing was, agreed upon. And that right now, I know we talked a little bit about trying to determine what long-term the plans
Right.
are. They don't currently have, there aren't any. It's this, they wanted to get the dam stabilized is the gist that I got. And then, if we want to do some kind of a new corridor, this would be the spot.
And right now, the bike path is on the eastern side.
yeah, it's on the other
Of
side of
36.
36.
At this point,
Yeah, because it only is further up.
Because
that
remember, it
crosses
dumps
and
out
comes
on
back.
the edge of 88th there.
Right,
Yeah, so
right,
you-
that's right.
yep. The cut across at that pedestrian bridge is kind of the eastern edge of Vista Hospital parking lot, maybe
That's
not
right.
the
It's
eastern
that
edge.
Not even
overpass.
there yet.
More like more almost,
Like-
right by
It's
the
about in the
town
middle,
center.
it's at the top,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
And it dumps out right now
To,
at the edge of what used to be the back of storage tech.
right.
Yep.
Yeah, they're building the path around.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
poured it
there's-
today, I saw.
To the bridge, yeah.
Yeah.
To get to the bridge, and you go
Up to
underneath.
the dig.
You don't have to go on top of 88 anymore, you can go underneath the bridge.
Oh, it
Get
did?
the bike path to the
Good.
bridge. So you go under 88, turn right. Looks like they're paving it too, it's
They-
not gonna be crusher.
No, it's cement.
It should be
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
cement.
Today. They were literally out there pouring it.
So this is the area that, the town has to work with if we want something, and it is on both OSAC and PROSTAC's work plans.
Was there any from a facility standpoint, is there any restrictions on what they want out there, like parking or
It's town.
covered area, or just, you know, crushed?
It's town property. So,
I mean-
bird perches, sitting areas, I would imagine that, they'd want it to be consistent with kind of more of a viewing corridor, not an active recreation site where you're
Yeah.
gonna be out there.
So do we think that they, because it seems so specific, that they would be even opposed to us wanting to put bird perches out, like
Right.
on the reservoir?
I think we, you know, if that was something the group was interested, we could approach them about having them do it. If they felt like it was in
Okay.
their, you know,
Okay.
that would definitely be in their purview to do it.
But Corey, to answer your question, I mean, parking would basically be the street parking that
Yeah.
exists. I mean, you have that
I just didn't know if there
stretch of
was.
Shamrock Drive that is basically just
Yeah,
the
right.
driving corridor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no residences on there.
I was just curious when it said facilities,
Could you
Yeah.
park along there?
you know, is
Yeah.
it facilities or park?
Okay, one
you
side
know?
of the street is no parking.
Okay.
And it's, I can't remember which, it's this side. isn't it?
It's that side, yeah.
Yeah,
This
it's the
side
north
down here
side.
has the signage, and then this side didn't.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, it's currently irrigated sod, we've got cottonwoods in there, and it's pretty lumpy, the cottonwoods are surface rooting like they are everywhere. And then we've got the fence line, and just kind of on the other edge of the fence line, it's just, it's not even really maintained native, it's just kind of unirrigated native. A lot of weeds down in there, with thistle issue down in there.
And on our trails plan, we had an overlook right in that zone.
This was in that list of priorities that we submitted as the 5-year trails plan. This overlook has been in that for a while.
Yep.
And then that, we can get to that as we get to the budget discussion.
And so, I mean, that would be a fairly limited, you know, our options are fairly limited. I mean, we would be talking about some type of pathway out to,
The seating area.
yeah, a little
Little
seating
trail
area.
bench.
You know, I don't know if it would be in the form of like a little deck or just a paved something.
Do we feel like if our options are that limited, that a lot of folks from town would use it? I mean, we're sort of overlooking the dam now and then the new construction on US 36. It's pretty noisy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that does become a concern of it. If we, you know, if we did something there, it would obviously be inexpensive, but at the same time, it's, the usefulness of it could be called into question, because it's not really giving you any more of a viewing area than you really get now if you just walk out
Yeah, you
across
can
the
stand in
grass
the
to the
grass, yeah.
edge of the property. You know, it's not getting you actually into any of the, like if we did a boardwalk, like across the
Right,
wetlands.
and that's
or
what we had
anything.
talked about last time, was that it would be really nice to be able to use some of the Boulder County land, or at least partner with them to be able to move out into that open space, and if we're not able to do that, like, is there a lot of value added to us
Yeah.
spending a lot of money on that tiny piece of
I
property?
mean, your view line, you're only seeing like not even half of the dam.
No, and you're getting
I
to
mean-
see, and what you are seeing is sort of obstructed a little bit by the condos.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a great spot.
The one advantage of putting something there, even if it is inexpensive, is alerting people that aren't aware of it, that there's something there and there's a reason to go there to look. I mean, not everybody in town has the knowledge or, you know, so it might be,
Well, I mean, it could be as inexpensive as just putting a couple benches up there.
right, exactly,
Right.
and some information about birds and where you
Well,
find
and
them.
that's the other thing, if we did have a dedicated viewing area, then that might get us more success in having the county put something like bird perches out there. And then your usefulness probably does go up, because it would be more of a active viewing area. And it's gonna serve, you know, a portion of the community that would, you know, probably enjoy a bird watching, a dedicated bird watching area in town. You know, not the majority of the town, but there certainly are people that would probably find value in that.
I guess I have another question though. Can you actually get around the property, like just taking the Sagamore or the
Saddlebrook?
Saddlebrook, yeah, geez. And then it looks like you run into that there's, even if you tried to get across, you have the easement of the 36 that you can't even get over there.
You can't get over there.
You can't.
And then
It's all
there's the
fenced.
property, the other
We have our
property that we
wastewater
don't own
treatment
yet.
plant.
Yeah, we don't have.
Additionally, isn't
have any.
Saddlebrook gated on that edge too?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Both entrances are gated. They have a, say, 3-foot fence, 2 high, just a round post. It goes all the way down through it, and then they have chicken wire on the bottom. I know because I was just up there about a week ago doing the water break, 2 weeks ago doing the water break in the Saddlebrook community. So it's pretty green up there. It's pretty luscious. It's pretty there.
But our access is basically, you know,
Yeah.
We have a
between
corner.
Saddlebrook,
Yeah, Saddlebrook is
having that
isolated,
whole
you can't
southern
get over.
portion, and
That gated
then the
Saddlebrook
county
opens.
and private property being
You can
on
drive in there,
the
Thought you needed to go.
northwest and east.
unless they've changed it. I drove in there last year when we
You
had
explore
ice
it.
on the buildings, because I wanted to go in and see if, on the buildings at the summit, I wanted to see if the ice was as bad on Saddlebrook, and we just drove in. Gate open, and we went in. We went in, walked around the
They
clubhouse.
must have known it was you.
I was just more curious if there's
No, it
any,
opened right up.
you know, opportunity for even the neighborhood to get around it. And I know we don't own the space up on the top.
Could have been because it was icy.
You know, and that's on the
I drove
proposed
right in.
open space discussion. But,
Well, I mean, that's the other option here is if, you know, if someone purchased and developed that property to the north and the west, then, you know, the town could very much ask for
a path or something.
yeah,
along the
as
northern
part of
side.
the approved FDP for any development there. And then that could open up the possibilities for our viewing area greatly. Or if the town were to buy that property, but, I mean, that seems less likely. But if the town were to buy that as either as open space or recreation space or something, then it could be developed into, at least, you know, have a path or something on that northern and western portion.
Just looking with how confined it is, it seems pretty, from my perspective, low on the priority. You know, it's great to have it and, you know, something that we could do in there small, but it's not like it's gonna have a huge impact no matter what you do, unless you can get out further and out of that corner.
Could we spend the dollars we would spend on that somewhere else where we can get a bigger bang for our buck?
The
What
problem
would it
is
cost to
that-
put a bench in there, though?
$5,000.
Just curious.
I mean, the
$5,000.
viewing area on the trails plan was what, 10,000? It wasn't very much.
Eight something.
Yeah. So, to answer your question, Lindsay, I mean, that's gonna get you very little elsewhere. I mean, it's not like we could go and build one of the other trails on the trail plan.
No,
and
no,
build
I'm
it.
just saying, could we combine that budget with something else?
You
to-
could combine it with something else, but it's not, there's really nothing else on the trails plan that would be like an even trade. It was such a low number on the trail plan budget, that it wouldn't accomplish a lot anywhere else. So, I think it would be helpful to know what OSAC thinks. You know, whether or not they think it's a priority of theirs or not. But yeah, I mean, our options are pretty limited.
Couldn't we get one of those things that's like on the top of the Empire State Building, and so we can like do
Drop it,
this?
Right.
drop a dime in it.
Drop it down.
The big giant binocular.
Yeah.
They take credit cards now.
Did they take credit for it?
Yeah.
That was a joke. That was.
There's still a payphone in the town.
I heard revenue
You could see-
generation, so I'm on that.
You jumped right on it.
Credit
We'll
card
get at least a
pricing?
dime
Yes.
a month.
You're putting some meters there too.
It would be cool when the
Charge
Pelicans
the
are out there.
car.
to be able to
Yeah,
look at
charge to park your car, and then
Charge for the banana.
a fee-operated gate that lets you out to be operated.
And if you wanna read the signs and figure out what birds are what,
Yeah.
that'll cost you too.
Well, I don't think we need a recommendation yet. Like I said, I think it would be helpful to know what OSAC thinks. I can talk to their chair and see if they'll discuss it next month if they haven't discussed it yet. And, you know, we can decide whether or not we think we need to make a a recommendation on this next month, but at this point, it's just a discussion. All right, so item 5, continuing discussion of the shade structures at Community Park or South Pool. Or we'll talk about this, we might need to just reopen this as something other than shade for the $35,000 for the park revitalization for this year. This is the $35,000 allocated for this year, not next year. So we're running out of time here.
So fiscal years align with calendar year for the town?
Yes.
Okay.
So, we need to make some decision probably tonight regarding what direction we really want to go on based on the information that Patrick's going to show us, go on for that $35,000 for this year. We've already made a recommendation for next year as well. It's just this year has not been panning out as we thought.
So what we're running into is, there were some general concerns with South Pool maybe not being the best location, and then some hesitation about the overall size. So we were gonna shift back down to Community Park. Met with the reps, took a look at Community Park, and to effectively do shade on a space that big, we're grossly exceeding $35,000. So, as I've kind of learned throughout this process, the cost is really in installing those posts. And then the equipment that was put in 20 years ago, the shade structures weren't even a thing, right? So the fact that we have to have these shade structures 8 feet taller than the peak of the play equipment makes that footprint just stretch out forever. And the more fabric you have for the shade structure, the more posts you have to get, and the thicker those posts have to be. The posts have to be 12 feet deep, and you have to keep them between 6 and 8 feet away from any play equipment. So we were looking at $100,000+ to do any type of realistic shade structure over Community Park. Now,
But are you talking an entire shade structure, like fully covered, not any gaps, just fully covered, not just
this was like
some
a triangular piece that would cover a section.
So kind of like South Pool had the
Yeah.
triangular.
And we kind of went back to South Pool, doing a 40 by 40 square. Now that I think we determined would be pretty darn close to budget, but there were concerns about, is that the best place for it?
Size, I remember, it gets really tall.
So we were at like
Above that
15
point.
feet, that play feature was 15 feet to the top, an additional 8 feet on top of that. Put the peak of that shade structure taller, a little bit taller than the existing pool building itself. Now, we could still go through with that exercise and try, but I worried a little bit that's we might get some pushback on something that big. So we're kind of at this spot where our two biggest shade needs, the equipment's almost outdated enough that, it's like the discussions we've had on the pools. You could almost reinvest for that price in new play equipment and bring the shades, now shade structures are integrated in with the piece of the equipment. They've got that kind of pitched plastic roof isn't as popular anymore. You see more like what we did at Founders, which doesn't have the little plastic kind of canopies. So something that the rep mentioned is there any value in doing shaded seating areas? Maybe you do like some unique kind of benches that have the metal umbrellas, something like that, where at least you're providing more shade for parents or some kind of break area for a kid. And I can kind of see if I can.
So, I think that's where our question lies, is if we're still focused on shade, do we revisit the South Pool shade structure, which would fall in budget? Or do we look at something that's not gonna cover the play equipment, that would just cover like Patrick said, some seating areas at one or more of the parks. But that seems be our only options for shade structures. So then we go back to, well, if we don't want to do shade structure, then what do we want to do?
So are you talking about shade structures that would go on other sides of, you know, like right now, there's the pavilion kind of near that playground. So are you talking like things that would go around more the other sides?
Right,
Okay.
you know, this was the example that they brought up to me is, you know, you could go by something this close, right? So we, you know, if we're looking at community park, maybe it is something that's closer, you know, to that little flat grass area. They also have, you know, holler if you guys are kind of seeing anything. But, you know, I think this is kind of where we originally started. Actually, that looks like the metal one. But,
I like those little cool colored tables.
the Trail Series shelter is something that they, you know, they mentioned.
What do those cost?
Budget on those.
On these, which it's well within our budget, but I don't have an exact number.
I'm just wondering, I mean,
But
could
does
we
that have
do,
How
one
many
or
could
could
ten?
we do like 2 of those
Like
at
that.
community and 2 of those at Purple, or, you know, or 2 of those at South?
I would be
Pool or
happy
something
to
like that?
ask.
Would we be able to do more than one park potentially under $35,000?
Could we put some down at, maybe another one down at the dog park even, or over at the,
Well,
at
What
the bike
about-
park?
What about Riverbend? There's nothing there at all, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, we could really
Yeah.
open it up to anywhere.
Well, I
It
think-
wouldn't necessarily have to be at a playground, though. I mean, technically, we're supposed to be doing playground revitalization, so, I mean, it probably should be at a playground, but it doesn't have to, I mean, we could recommend it
The
be.
key would be, to me, that it ties into a playground because it allows a spot for the kids to play and then come out and relax, or the parents to sit on the side and relax in the
Mhm.
shade. Because,
Mhm.
you know, on hot days, everyone needs a little bit of just a relief. And, yeah, some of those shade structures that we've been looking at are pretty
And especially
large.
at Community Park, the trees surrounding the play structure are pretty far away and tiny.
Yeah.
So it would make sense to put those there, if we could.
Yeah, I think those would be kind of cool down
There are tons of parents who literally are like huddled underneath those little tiny trees over there.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you do
Or they're
have,
way
you
up
do
in the
have
shelter,
the little
and
covered
put 'em-
shelter, but yeah, I mean, it's probably
Yeah.
not sufficient, especially since like that second playground that's to the west of the main playground.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can't be in the little shelter and see that playground, so like, if you did these
Around the edge of the western
more
part.
to the western
Mhm.
end of the play equipment, then it would definitely serve a new use, because there is not currently a.
And it also allows us,
shelter.
when the park is rented out, to leverage that as part of the seating for when the park is rented out. Because it
Well,
does
that's a
happen
good question.
fairly
I mean,
often.
you don't rent out the community park covered pavilion, do you?
It gets rented all the time.
Oh, it does? Okay.
But so does the field, and so the field right now has those little tiny stick trees. So this could be something else that could be rented as a part of that.
And I mean, just to revisit, I mean, in addition to the shade structure that we kind of fixated on, the other top priorities when we looked at the playground revitalization was Purple Park Pavilion, which is gonna happen as a separate CIP request for next year. And then we looked at a possible repurposing of Children's Park in Original Town. And then we looked at the possibility of replacing the relatively tiny piece of play equipment at North Pole. Those, the shade, Purple Park, Children's Park, and North Pole, those were our top priorities when we went over this. And we had picked the shade piece out for this year. And so if we were not to do shade, the question is, do we go back to one of the other ones? Or do we stick with shade and come up with something different?
Really like the idea of putting these little shade guys on the other side of Community Park. I actually think they would really get used.
Patrick, are you able to bring up the Google Earth of the community park?
Question we gotta think about, see how they have it all laid out in concrete? Are we gonna wanna lay it out in concrete too? Because those pillars that go in the ground are probably what, 12 feet, or say
Yeah.
12, 16 feet? You gotta have a case on for those to stand still with the wind gusts that we have coming through Rock Creek. You gotta think about that. You don't wanna spend $8,000 on on a shade structure and have it blow down less than 45, 90 days.
I think that to be consistent with town, it would probably have to be
I mean,
on
that's gonna be
a
town
concrete
policy.
slab.
Yeah. I think we probably would.
I mean,
think-
pour
I
a
think we
concrete
probably would
slab
put a
or?
Concrete slab.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were gonna do it, I think, start it off and doing it right.
Of course, that's
But yeah, I think we probably have to put concrete.
Well, what
So-
about like at South Pool, they have the rubber kind of padding,
Yeah.
you know.
The pour in place.
You can cut it.
Yeah. You know, I mean, there's
Yeah.
different alternatives to.
That might be
is
almost
too.
as expensive as the concrete or even more, right?
Yeah, probably.
The pour in place.
Yeah, because you'd have to put concrete under the form place. But yeah, the form place.
Well,
was
ADA
probably-
accessibility was another issue with all the parks and making sure that, you know, they're accessible to everyone.
The interwebs are slow today.
This room
It's the hamster that
is terrible. Always get nervous when you have to do meetings and pull stuff up, like with the work.
Just wait 20 minutes.
It's gonna take forever.
What did we do for Google Earth? This is a lot more complicated.
We have to try it out.
Draw pictures on a
See, I
whiteboard.
just think if we put some shade structure.
Like right over there on the
Over there,
west
or
side?
even if we put it on the other side.
Do something close to that trail.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, do you?
That's a pretty-
do you
that's a
get
pretty
it
flat
in be-
spot.
Like in between the
Right
two?
here, Lindsay.
Yep.
Yeah, or even in
Yep.
between.
I run that trail all the time.
I know we've got some drainage issues over there, but,
Well, the sprinklers are,
I mean, could you even
make
do?
it squishy.
yeah.
Could you even do one, like where the cursor is pointed, and then one to the south, the same spot?
Like the
Yeah,
opposing
right there.
direction?
Yeah,
I don't know how steep that hillside is right there, but
well, yeah, grade allows.
It's, I mean, it's relatively flat.
Just from the other side.
Yeah, this is, the steep part is right
Steep's
over
Over
here.
there,
Over here is pretty steep. Right there.
on the backside.
what would we have to do? We'd have to do retaining wall, anything too, right?
For, on the west side, or you're talking this way, you guys, right? Or are we talking here? For
No.
retaining wall? Shoot the grade, to cut it down to grade, where it depends on what you're gonna pour for a pad. If it's gonna be 6-inch concrete pad, say 6 inches, you take 6 inches out, and you get 35 to 4,500 PSI mud, which is pounds per square inch of it to break or crack, ever. And that's the best, I mean, the higher PSI concrete you have, the better chances you have of it lasting over the longevity of not cracking. With the ground moving, because the ground always moves. Everything, we irrigate that, there's sprinklers all over that. So you gotta think about accountability of when you water that, the ground gets saturated and everything sinks and settles. You probably shoot that to grade. You could put a retaining wall of 1 foot high, maybe 1.5 to 2 foot retaining wall on the backside, which is no big deal. It's pretty easy. What you're looking at is time and materials to tear that out, and it's pretty easy to shoot it to grade with the transit.
So I could throw both locations out and just, you know, see what they come back with.
And the reason why I know that, since you run that trail right here, like you said, have you noticed the cracks and how it's all moving? because he used cheap concrete. That's why. That's why it's all moving. It's because it's cheap and the fibers are not very, very strong in the concrete and mud. You get a good
And it's
concrete
wet all the
base.
time over there.
Yeah. It's a bit of a double-edged sword over there because the grass isn't athletics, it's not athletic grass, it's just Kentucky blue.
Yeah. Oh, it's
But we-
beautiful.
We allow them to play on it,
Yeah, but they're like little tiny soccer players.
so the beat up we get from the YMCA, so we're over watering it and it doesn't have the drainage system under it to be a sports surface, and it's, this group has talked actually, I mean, we've talked about redoing that west multi-purpose field, I think probably predating me. You know, and getting it somehow to drain better and taking the sod out
Uh-huh.
and actually putting in sod that drains. Because, I mean, man, after that flood, we didn't play soccer down there for like
No, it was like
3
a
months.
sponge.
It was terrible over
Yeah.
there.
So can you go over just briefly what you talked about with the shade structure of this location of how big it was? Because were you trying to get the west and the east or just one portion?
We were just trying to, well, you know, initially, we looked at doing something here. You know, in some
Okay,
kind of
the
triangular
swings.
pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, they had some concerns about, well, depending on where you put your triangle, are
It's
you
gonna miss it.
Are you
Yeah.
gonna miss it? And then we
Make sure it's
kinda
on the
came
south
over and
side.
looked over here, and it was like, well, you know, you get this footprint over here, then you got post out here, so it
Of course.
It wouldn't.
retroing shade over something as tall as what we have seems to be pretty problematic, because this whole idea of, for compliance needing to be 8 foot taller than the pitch of the.
Well, you
I-
can't have kids, I mean, the
You-
kids sit on top
Yep.
of the existing structure.
And that's exactly what she'd said.
And so, safety-wise, I mean, they will try to get up onto that, and that's.
And he said
that
the other,
makes more
when,
sense.
the very first time Peter and I met with her, she was giving us examples of, you know, they'd come out and slit it with a knife and then crawl up there and crawl up on top and try to, you know, slide down on it. So then it's,
Oh my goodness.
you know, and then you have these, you know, the regulations that it's gotta be, the posts are treated like another piece of play equipment, so it's gotta fall outside that fall height range. So, you know, your tallest equipment, you can't have anything 8 feet around it. So it starts to get expensive when those,
Well, and-
shade's not incorporated into the design.
And honestly, you know, it almost comes down to if you don't put in the shade structure, even if you put in trees on that southern edge, you know, you're getting better, you know, longevity of the shade during the summer and not during the winter. And, you know, but it'd take years for those trees to get to the right height.
Although if we were spending 35 grand on trees, we could buy some pretty big trees.
Very true.
Well,
Buy some
you
larger
can-
trees that drop in.
You can ask Patrick on the town's success rate with trees.
These are tough. We've planted over 175 trees this year, and we've removed 80 of them. So, and that's a low year.
Patrick, why
You're not
are
supposed to
some
put them in the
trees?
2-foot median, by the way.
Yeah.
Get the drip line.
Peter, when you guys were doing the playground study, were there other areas, other playgrounds south of, like the South Colton ones, or other places that really need shade as well, that have more or less?
The problem becomes pretty much all the parks could use shade. I mean, really none of the playground. The only one that has even a little bit of shade from trees is Purple Park.
And that's just the trees are super mature.
Yeah,
They're older.
exactly.
And I'm not talking about covering the play structures, because I'm not sure, but I mean, some sort of shade for people that are, you know, like the picnic shade or something.
Pretty
like-
much pick a playground and it could pretty much use something
That's, well,
like
that's
this.
what I'm trying, so, I mean,
Um,
as much as I'd love to put both of them here, what if we put one here and one somewhere else?
Well, that was, my question was, could we afford to do like 2 different locations?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, what about like Pirate Park or, I don't know, I don't go to children's parks very much, but.
Yeah.
But which ones could use the shade?
If you guys want,
Park could use 2 structures definitely for sure.
if you want to start to pass, I think if you guys just want to take a quick peek, we had looked at exposure, we had kind of lumped in, I remember, kind of shade into that exposure category. And then based on the rankings, so you do see lots of lots of 2s and 3s, and I remember Shannon saying the 2 things you have issues with is you're constantly exposed and you're not graded ADA. So there's, and they kind of went through and listed the, high, medium, and lows. So I think if you feel free to pass it around, but if you were to probably see something as a medium or a high at exposure on the parks, that would maybe be our next. Here's the front page there.
It looks like the only ones that they listed medium were community park and South
Were all the rest of them higher, or were the rest of them?
Children's.
I think they were all kind of in that medium, like a 3, which means
Children's,
address it.
community, and South Pool are all listed as medium for exposure.
And then if you want to read what number 3 ranks as, which is their score, I think it says.
Number 3 is maintain and or repair.
What is the unit cost on shade structure that we were talking about with the concrete in place? Just say without the concrete, just unit cost on something like that. Would they give us a better deal if we bought 4 of them? Or, I understand we gotta stay in that budget, but if they price one out at $6,100
Right.
for the steel, the iron, the metal, for everything, the
Right.
sheet metal, everything, they price one unit out at $6,100. Would they give us a better deal if we bought
Probably.
more than 1 or 2?
Probably.
We should look into that.
Yeah.
We really should.
And to go along with that, I mean, to put 2 in a community park would probably be cheaper than to put just 1 at community,
Yeah.
1 at pirate,
Yeah,
1
because they're already there.
because you're doing it 2 in one location.
And we are still,
There's
you know,
some
the other thing that we chat
cost
about then is,
efficiency.
does this still qualify for that sunshade safety grant that we were
Yeah.
looking at? And it does,
It does qualify it.
because it is providing shade, so there is still that opportunity that we could.
Well, it's
we could go up.
multi-purpose then
Yeah,
too,
we
because
could
it's
go
not
up for
just,
grants.
it's not just shade, like we're giving them
Bench too.
tables and benches
That's
and.
right. Is that all, can you bring that, can you go back to that website, is that all one where they put the caissons in the ground, they have the sun structure, is it all connected? I wanna see the steel working, see how it's all connected, is the benches and the chair all
I
connected as
think it
one?
was, I have to.
So one other thing I will say is, if take Pirate Park
I
as
can
an
shoot
example,
this to you.
we could easily say, oh, well, Pirate Park should have one of these, but at the same time, Pirate Park is another one that we had identified for possible other upgrades. So we would want to think about the big picture of like Pirate Park, of, well, do we want to do this here, or do we really, because we had talked about like doing some type of embankment slide or something on the hill, or possibly like I think a swing could have possibly fit there if they changed just the shape of the play pit a little bit. So we wouldn't want to be premature in saying put something like this at Pirate Park if we thought we still wanted to do something else at Pirate Park. So the same could be said at any of these other parks, and we would want to be sure that we're not really looking at possible other changes in the near future that this could then get in the way of.
So maybe
So
we should
that's
continue our
something.
focus on either the park at the South Pool or a community park for these particular improvements. If we're planning on doing Pirate Park later,
Yeah. Well, I think that something like Community Park, it's pretty safe to say we're not doing any other big changes. So doing an add-on like this isn't gonna affect anything else that we might do.
okay?
Whereas if we were to do it at Pirate Park, we might in a year or two say, hey, but we wanted to do this at Pirate Park and now we put this thing in the way. The same with, Castle Park had some options of possibly doing something a little bit different because they have that field area. So we don't want to go plunk one of these things down and then say, we had talked about doing a half-court basketball court there or something like that. We want to think long-term for the, like 5 years out or something like that, for the locations that we were talking about. Same with Children's Park. I mean, Children's Park came up as medium exposure on there, but we've talked about does Children's Park, does that playground just go away entirely because of the Founders Park playground? Is it just basically obsolete, and do we find another purpose for that park? So we wouldn't want to go put something like this in there only to turn around in a couple of years and say we want to tackle Children's Park this year.
And like everything, you know, this would become our spec. You know, this would be kind of like what we do with the trash cans now. You know, the goal would be to kind of pick something that we think is going to have legs and be able to hang on for, you know, a good number of years. And if there's other locations where we want to do this, it's kind of like our discussions about the pavilion, you know, Purple Park, making sure that that's consistent with the other ones. The benching that we do throughout town, you know, is consistent. So, but I could have like pricing to you guys Friday at the earliest, Monday or Tuesday at the latest, just because we've discussed this option several times.
To me, this seems like a better use of our money than trying to create a shade structure that's tall enough to be 8 feet above our playground equipment.
And then in the future, if we
These are
upgrade
plug and
the-
play, don't you think?
Yeah, but in the future, if we want to have shade on play equipment, that it should be
Mhm.
part of that, not trying to retrofit.
I wish I
Yeah.
would have, even during the Founders Park discussion, I wish we would have kind of kept some of that in mind. When I was meeting with them, I was like, wow, you know, if we were to ever try to add anything over Founders, I mean, it's gonna have to be pretty tall.
Yeah, and the wind up there, you wouldn't know it anyway.
True.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we were to talk about possibly replacing that play equipment at North Pool, for example, because that's one of the things we discussed, then we should definitely keep in mind, well, if we're gonna replace that, then let's replace it with something that has integrated shade into it. Do we need to make any recommendation on this, or, I mean, is this continuing?
All this ties back to playground, so upgrades, right, and things like that.
Yeah.
So some of the other pieces that I just remember from that, now that, going back to some of my old notes as well, was that we talked about that there's just the ADA accessibility and the actual ground cover of what's actually in a lot of the parks. Some have the P-rock,
Yeah.
P-gravel, there's some that have the chips.
Yep.
You know, so there's a lot of different material types, just even that type of upgrade would be a big help for some of the parks.
And we had talked at the time, and I think I'd have to go back, but the ADA specific issues were almost a separate conversation with the board. If you guys remember at the time, what we were trying to kind of figure out was if you do port in place, you have to have the slope that goes down into it, or you have to be completely flush.
Right.
And the fear is that some of our play pits aren't deep enough to allow you to get the proper slope on your concrete entry. So you'd have to pull all the pea gravel out, then dig down to get it deep enough. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a whole.
I mean, just,
You're
you
talking-
know, from an overall big picture, I know we have this amount this year, and it's like, are some of these other things needed to be addressed, and are they part of that pool of money, or is this?
We did about $5,000 worth of the EWF, the engineered wood fiber, this past month
Mhm.
at the three parks that we weren't compliant. I don't remember. Founders was too low. We added some to Children's, and I want to say Pirate or Cabin or something like that. But yeah, you're
And
right.
I mean, it's that
Surfacing,
step in, you know, it's
Yeah.
like a big drop.
surfacing was the other one that came up consistently.
Well, yeah, and so that is something we need to revisit, because what we had talked about at the time of, that's something we probably need to go with, a little bit more of a plan to the board for, of, this is something that needs to be, that potentially needs to be addressed across the board at, basically all the playgrounds. I think there were only a couple that have really addressed it. Community has that now, that one swing, the ADA swing that has the pour-in-place ramp to it, and then Founders Park has a ramp that is EWF. So it's still not the best service, but it does have a ramp into it, right?
Yes, it does, yes.
So, but other than that, I mean, all the playgrounds really need to be addressed from the ADA standpoint, so kind of need to go to the board and say, is this something that, separate from the $35,000 a year, is this something that you want to tackle with more of like a master plan of how to address this, in the long term? Because if we just did $35,000 a year, we would be dedicating the next 10 years to ADA
Porta Place
projects.
was 13, the last one we did was 13 a square foot, 13 by 2 square foot. When we did South Pool. And then we did the engineered wood fiber this past month at the North Pool Playground, Children's Park, and Founders Park, because we weren't meeting our minimum depth when the guys were doing their monthly kind of checks.
Patrick, do we have any timeline concern? I mean, if you come back to us with, in the next week with the budget on these, and then at our next meeting, we say, yeah, we want to go ahead and recommend that this be done at Community Park, wherever. I mean, we're then middle of October. Is it still something that the town could complete within this budget year?
Yeah. So how the budget works is we can spend that money up to December 31st at midnight, 11.
But you'd be able to plan it, put it out to
With the weather?
bid, and get it done, you think? in
If it's under
2.5
25,
months?
if total project's under $25,000, we win it. That's good.
You know,
We have to get competitive pricing. So what I would do is I'd find the 3 comparable structures, and a lot of times we're part of the state bid system. You kind of just go in and type and say, hey, I want to see this product in the 3 bids compared to the price that they're giving me, and that's consistent with the town's purchasing policy. And then we can always do things like, it's not turnkey, we can even do the concrete separate. Have somebody do the concrete pad and then buy the material. So, but yeah, I think timeline would be fine.
okay.
So I'll follow up with an email to the group as soon as I have it.
So just for my knowledge though, our couple pieces that we're looking at are the 2 shade structures at Community Park right now. And then anything else, just those 2 at this point?
Well, yeah, so does anyone else have a suggestion for an alternate or second location other than Community Park that wouldn't necessarily be what I talked about, getting in the way of something else that we've talked about?
No, and remember last time we talked about how South Pool Park wasn't necessarily the best option because during the summer, you can only access the South Pool Park through the pool, and there's all those shade structures inside the pool area right now.
Yeah.
And during the winter, when you can use it when the pool is closed, you wouldn't
You're
necessarily
okay.
want to stand in the shade because it's cold.
And they actually, on that corner, there's a little, like,
Yeah, that's
on the path right there, there's a
That's
shade
right.
structure, yeah.
So I think
Our
that you.
upside down interpreted sign.
Yes, well,
So I think Community Park seems like a good target.
Yeah. And according to that, it was one of the key issues at Community Park was the shade.
I mean,
And with the distance people have to walk from their car,
Yeah.
it needs a little bit of a relief.
I think the alternatives would be looking at non-playground areas like Riverbend,
Circle Park.
Autry.
What about up by the baseball park? What about up there by the fields, Scanlon Field, they're by close by the park? They're gonna give us a good deal with more units that we buy. If they say, all right, this is a base price of $6,100, just say, base price is $6,100 without the concrete.
What
We'll
are you
give you a
saying,
better deal.
between them, George, or?
I'm saying more towards, see right there where the park is, and we have our concrete, right about right there in that area right there, by the fence, yeah, of course. I mean, there's a lot of kids that play there, and the deal is that when I coach football, all the kids, all of our linemen and all of our defensive guys, we'd make them go have exercise, and parents would sit up against that fence watching their kids practice for Mustang football. But now since Mustang football has disevolved, I don't know what the usage of our football field is gonna be, but that's a thought, if you think about it, is if you put that there, you could have it for the Chili Fest for extra seating, for somebody to sit during Chili Fest, for elderly people that push strollers, grandkids, they could sit there and take a break while the parents go out and enjoy themselves at the beer garden. You gotta think about that too as well.
it's probably not the best place for baseball though. Because if there are foul balls going out over the side.
I'm talking about on this side of the concrete, right there on the other side.
Oh, there,
Right up
that's a
there, yeah.
huge hill though.
Yeah, it'd be
You
like
can shoot
big
the
game.
grade too. You should, if there's any thing about it, it'd be all right.
Little retaining.
Have a retaining wall. Or come down closer to the sidewalk. You can just tie into the sidewalk and pin it with a concrete pad.
I think you would have to pin it with the sidewalk
course
because
you would.
of the accessibility, the ADA accessibility of the pad.
Absolutely, and there's already access for a handicap ramp there already.
So, I mean, we'll see what pricing Patrick comes back with, see how many of these we think we could get. I mean, is your pricing gonna include the pricing of the concrete pad and the shelter?
And we'll assume as flat a surface as possible, so that's what we'll start with.
We can be strategic about where we place them to make the grade as
Yeah.
flat as possible.
Absolutely.
Well, and like I said,
You want to face the right direction.
once
course.
the spec's established, I mean, that's the good thing about kind of going down this path is as other areas pop up, or other needs surface, we have a process, we have a product. You know, we don't have to go out to bid, you know, it becomes kind of what we do.
It's almost like little mini pavilions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can kind of plug and play them where we
Which
need
would be
them.
kind of cool.
I mean, it's great, it's a great little space that, you know, could be a great breakaway from places.
And my only comment, based upon your question about anything else that people see, we're too late in the process here to try to start something new. Let's just go with the shade for this year, get it done, and maybe
Yeah.
next year we decide, oh, that was a terrible idea, we'll do it again. So just gotta push this through by before the end of the year, and I think we have pretty much written off the stop pool, so let's move
Yeah.
forward and make it happen, so. See how many we can get, but.
Okay.
Right?
10 for the price of one.
I'll negotiate hard.
Probably about 10.
All right, so move on to updates and look ahead. Patrick can give us an update on next year's budget.
All right, so just kind of quick overview of where we are with the budget. I don't know if anybody attended board meeting Monday night. I did not. Kind of the highlights for Parks and Rec, what is in the budget is the Purple Park Pavilion, pushing up the Williams Field replacement. So if you guys remember, that had been pushed out several times.
Next year?
Next year. So these are all next year items. So Purple Park Pavilion, we had budgeted 100,000.
So
Williams Field.
surface?
Yep, so we'll take the crumb rubber out, new crumb rubber, new surface, new paint, and a whole 9 yards. Look at any drainage issues that
How
have
about
that
100
Surfaces
yards?
in my house.
How much will those go for? Budget?
Net new synthetic fields are $8 a square foot. $160,000 in North Pool repairs to keep it operable. And that doesn't include any coverage or anything, that's just a new pump room. And then we will.
That's in addition to all the work we did?
I don't know if you guys knew, but the last week it was open, it did it again. So electric overhaul,
Okay.
HVAC overhaul, the whole 9 yards, because we can't figure out if we're getting electric surges into the building or what. I mean,
Got fire insurance?
Yeah.
that's
Start it
either.
all over again.
So those kind of big projects, right now, we'll do all of Eldo Park, all $3.2 million of it
Next year?
next year.
Wow.
And then if FTPs come through the door, we will do final master plan and get the FTP paid for parcels 1 and 2.
Park,
So those are kind of big.
What's the budget on the park? You said that was the.
I want to say that it's like 3.2 million.
3.2, and that included everything, so that was like, there was some sand volleyball and some pavilions,
Is
the parking, the
Elder Park,
restrooms.
forgive me for my ignorance, the new, where's that one?
Right next to El Dorado Cave.
Big-
Oh,
guy.
oh.
The big
It's a big
12
open.
12
Big
acre
open
parcel.
parcel that's over
13
there?
acres.
Nice.
Just
They're
the-
12.6, you're right. So that's in there.
What about the
35,000 for the budget.
What about the trails? That there had been that 200,000 from the
200,000
open
in trails
space.
is in there.
Is that still in there?
Yes.
But it hasn't been assigned anything as
It
part
has
of the
not.
budget process?
It is not. And again, the board has not officially voted
I
to
started
approve
hearing
all
that
of
they
this.
could-
These are projects that are still in the budget. We're not getting a lot of questions about them. everybody seems to be very comfortable with them. So I'll let you know if and when the board approves it, what's all in there. So,
But if the $200,000 for trails goes forward, when would it actually be tied to specific trails?
we would probably need to go through reprioritization. So there'll be $200,000 next year for trails. We need to figure out what we want those trails to be.
Okay. Well, we had made a recommendation, but then PROSTAC has not, I don't think, made a recommendation for that, but they had a little bit different priorities. I mean, we seem to be in agreement on some things, but they had really been prioritizing the Shan Shan trailhead, whereas we had not really discussed that one. We had been prioritizing Coyote Ridge. They seem on board with that, but that was not something they had previously been discussing. So,
If that does get approved, is it worth having a sort of joint meeting with those guys to reprioritize?
we're probably gonna have to join a meeting with them regardless, because as we discussed, I think it was last month, we're gonna work to try to do a joint 5-year trails plan list. And so, I mean, we're gonna be having a trails discussion with them regardless of the budget for trails next year.
Okay.
Prior to that discussion, do you think we can get an understanding of the town center and if there's any trails and connectivity in there?
We don't have any FDPs.
Nothing tied to that? Because I know they have the parcels, but is there any connectivity within the town center?
And we never got to consensus on what parcel 1 and 2 were gonna look like from the board. So there's.
I was hoping here, I was pulling,
No, but I
just for overall connectivity and
Yeah.
just where that is and, if there's small segments to tie those together.
I'm sure there will be, and I know, but
But
it's.
if those fall back underneath that development, then that's outside of our, and we
Right.
can develop elsewhere, which would be great.
Yeah, so that's gonna be something that it's interesting as that evolves over the next couple of years, because there does need to be that continuity between 36 by corridor. So, and with as much as things have changed at Town Center, I'd hate to get us down one rabbit hole and then have it go.
Well, there are preliminary, like, the street layouts with the bike lanes and some of the pathways, right? It's just, that actually hasn't gone all through the FDP
Right.
process, but,
And some
I mean,
of that.
there is a general layout, an
It's-
initial concept, right?
There's initial concepts, yes, but even.
For access and driving.
Yeah, but even looking at maybe potential block with realignments, I mean, there's some of that conversation still to,
Still going through.
if you guys remember parcel 2, having the residential back right up to the park,
Oh, yeah.
and maybe that not being the best idea, and us maybe wanting a road that backed up to the park. I mean, something like that that's a game changer.
Well, and that was a huge impact because the restrooms couldn't be down in the floodplain
Right.
and all
Restrooms can't be in the floodplain.
whatever that animal was that we had to protect.
The
them.
Preble.
The little mouse,
That
whatever,
is the thing.
it's the little thing down there.
You guys weren't as involved in it with OSAC, but as they're going through their CLOMAR, right, which is the conditional letter of map revision to work within the floodplain, that's still anywhere from a year to 2 years out before the feds approve something like that. So you need all these things to sequentially fall in order. You can't really do the CLOMAR. You can't design the road until that's done. We can't design the park until we know what the height of the bridge is gonna be and the width of the roads are gonna be. So we can't figure out where the trail alignment's gonna be next to the
Man,
road.
problems,
So
I tell ya.
there's a lot of, and I think what we've started to notice is we'll go down one direction when we think we're there. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait. Now we wanna maybe do this. And we back all the way up and go kind of a different direction. But yeah, trail signage, continuity, it's next couple of years, it's coming.
So as we talk trails, we talked a lot about trails along the Caslin and on the western or eastern side. And there was also discussion whether that was, part of the trail requirements or more part of the road and maintenance of that. And has there been any other discussion about that where, some of that funding, do we want to, just, I'm thinking ahead here, if that's a key trail that would be added as part of the roadway or it's something that we'd look at.
How much did we spend on trails this year?
So far.
We didn't do trails this Trails was yanked.
That's what I say. The reason I asked that question.
Trails was yanked last year and this year.
That was the first thing they're gonna cut when they don't have enough money. I mean, just be careful about this.
Well, we just have, they never gave us a budget.
Getting me all excited
Well,
here.
I
Come
know.
on.
Two years ago, we had the trail money to do soft surface
Still an amateur.
from here up to Key Bank. And then, if you guys kind of remember the dialogue back, we got all the way down that path, and then the determination was is that it needed to be concrete. Because it was, it abutted McCaslin, and then that budget, the budgeted amount was quickly up the window. So there still has been, and I'd have to go back through, but I think there actually was a suggestion from this group that any trail that was alongside McCaslin needed to be a concrete trail. So you're now starting to talk about some big money.
Serious money. Concrete's $120 a yard.
Yeah.
You know, there's a
Concrete
4-yard
costs,
minimum.
concrete
What does that
costs
tell
are
you?
just.
How many yards, you know, square footage wise in yards? Concrete.
And we had talked about whether or not that should fall
But
under.
maintenance of the trails, I've seen them redo
Public
crushed
works.
agger, crushed
Right.
agger so many times because they wash out, so.
You're
You're
right.
paying for the crushers 3 times, you pay for the concrete once, so. Yeah, it's that balance.
Also, you gotta think about is if they develop the Rogers property here, we should make the developer pay for trails. We should.
Well, no, I mean,
They're improving our town.
yeah.
They need to put something back for our community. And I think they need to honestly fork out a little bit of money and help us out with our trails.
And like Calmonte, they were asked to do a portion of a trail along the castle there. It's just, the board probably didn't get them to do enough, because if we want to do a crossing over Rock Creek, we're gonna have to cover the cost of that bridge, right? And Calmonte's not covering that. They're just doing the trail.
They're doing the trail that leads to the underpass under.
They're doing the trail that does the underpass underneath Colton, and that's it. That's
Yeah.
just a short section of.
From
making sure.
there, so from the second, the trail's in their property,
Okay.
down through that little open space on the corner, connecting to the existing trail system was what we agreed to, at their expense. That way we
Something to
didn't,
think about.
that way we didn't have to eat it.
And I mean, they do, they, to be consistent with most, you know, FDPs that are approved, the developments have to have a certain percentage of open space, and then they usually put in a certain amount of trails.
And this last update item on Coal Creek Crossing will actually go over this very scenario.
When's the final budget?
October, I don't remember exactly what the government date is, October 15th, somewhere in there. So just kind of quick heads up, couple of cool events coming up. We do have National Day of Service going on this weekend. We've got a sizable group, I don't remember that, I think it's Turner Construction, 30 or 40 who are gonna help us with some creek cleanup on the, still just kind of flood cleanup. We also are gonna add, or we have added Nasty Park cleanup if people aren't comfortable being around the creek and maybe don't wanna do that kind of volunteer work. The wood at Nasty Park needs to be, kept up every couple of years. It's getting dry, so we'll do linseed oil and just some light trail maintenance. So if anybody's interested, you can sign up online. And then, Daryl, do you wanna kind of give a overview of the art show?
Sure.
Would be awesome.
The town has decided to do an art show for the first time this year. It's gonna correspond with the museum opening so that we can take advantage of that. So we'll have a big tent set up in Asty Park. At the board meeting on Monday night, a couple things changed. We had originally put a deadline in for registration, but they decided since it's such a tight window of time to not have any deadline for registration, we can pass these around. So we are already starting to advertise to the schools, and it's for adults, children, everybody, and it's not limited to the town either, because one of the things that came up is that at some of the schools, kids open enroll into the schools, and so they're from different towns, and if we want to get Superior kids that go to Monarch, we don't want to limit to just Superior. So we're not going to limit location, and there's no registration deadline.
Yeah, we're really excited. I think at least from PROSTAC, we're really excited because this is another way for us to kind of do community activity and not have it be sports-based or typical kind of traditional recreation-based.
Right, and we've contacted Jill Berry, who is a Superior artist, and she's gonna do a kids activity. We're gonna have a teen, tween, adult activity as well. And if you were at Chili Fest and came by, we had created the Edvard Munch's The Scream in a big, huge board that you'd stick your head in and scream out of. Which, is it at the fire station right now?
Yeah, I think the guys picked it up.
Okay, all right. Just to try and encourage, get people to come over and talk about it. So it's a nice opportunity to show your stuff. And it's not limited to any particular medium. So if you're a sculptor and you really want to bring your giant sculpture down, have at it.
Yeah. So please pass it on. We're excited.
Photography.
Yeah, photography. No, photography's great. Paint, fiber arts, and I actually talked to a couple people that are either book art, like they write books or poems, and I said, well, that's art too. If you could find a way. And we were talking about, can you put like a chapter on an iPad and have that be an interactive exhibit? I don't know if they'll do it or not, but I was just trying to encourage them.
So has something gone out over,
Went out today.
I got
It
an
went out
email-
today.
I got an email, both
Okay.
my email accounts about it.
okay,
And I really do give this group kudos for wanting to kind of stick with it and push this state. We always worry a little bit about red tape and drawing things out and losing momentum instead of just kind of going for it and trying it. And I think going for it and trying it has been pretty successful this past year. And totally a good jumping off point. With the little bit of success we had even at the Arbor Day Art Show, was super encouraging. So as we try to find ways as a Parks and Rec department and as a town to do more outside the box recreational thinking, this is absolutely it. So.
And there'll be food and music and
food.
food. Yeah. So tell all your artists or bring your art things. Yeah, well, they did want to push the deadline, but we don't have an indoor space big enough to actually do anything. So we wanted to try and choose a date that potentially wasn't going to be snowy, that coincided with the opening of the museum, so that we could really take advantage of that, so that people could have an opportunity to go to the museum and the art show at the same time. Cool.
Yeah, well done.
Patrick,
Are they judging?
what was the decision on
There will
that
be a people's choice.
War activity at Oktoberfest? Is that
I
gonna
think it's a
happen?
go. Yeah.
Okay.
We had a bit of a challenge getting on the same page with Lisa, who does the HOA events, but I think we got it figured out. So it's just kind of a heads up for this group. It's been advertised a little bit. We're gonna do, the foam dart guns.
Oh, cool.
We tracked down a group that will actually set up an arena with inflatables, and they bring thousands and thousands and thousands of darts and referees, and they have all kinds of different games. And we were gonna host it as just an activity just for Parks and Rec, but one of our goals as a department was to interact more with the HOA, so we approached the HOA about doing it at Oktoberfest. We're always trying to figure out tween and teen activities, and we've seen some places do this event pretty successfully.
So will it be in Purple Park
It'll be in purple. And it's cool, these guys come out and there's referees and we'll have staff there and they provide the guns, goggles, like thousands and thousands and thousands of darts and different games and scenarios. So we're optimistic that it'll kind of reach that tween group that that everybody's trying to struggle to figure out.
There is a cost. Was it $5 for 15
Yeah.
minutes, 20
For
minutes?
20, 5 for 20. And we, it was like $400 or $500 to get the guys or whatever. Kind of like an inflatable rental for the day. So,
Seems worth it, especially for that segment of the population.
yeah, and it's been great. So the first group that wanted to sign up was our youth
Advisory.
the youth advisory kids. So they're actually doing it as a team builder. They've done slack climbing and now they're doing this.
That's
And then they
fun.
want to do the tree. We did tree climbing this past year too. We brought in a vendor. We did tree climbing, and that went really well. So the youth services kids want to do that as well. All right, last quick update item is, as you guys know, if you've been through original town, Coal Creek Crossing is building. And as part of their approved FDP back in 2012, and kind of George going to what you were just talking about, they are on the hook to build a trail connection. And I'll show you a couple different images. So Coal Creek Drive here. Here's, the development. This solid black line. Let's switch views here. This is a little bit better, Coal Creek Drive. You can see that this will be a soft surface trail. We'll kind of connect around. And this is probably about 4th and Charles. And then a leg of it, which would potentially go to Boulder County open space. I just wanted to keep you guys in the loop. It was approved on an FDP in 2012. The developer's on the hook to build it. It is another connection point from what will become, the town will maintain this trail because it's in our open space. We won't maintain any of the interior connections here. That'll all be part of an HOA. The county has also not formally agreed. There's about a 190-foot gap between the edge of our property and the Mayhopper Single Tree Trail. Boulder County is interested in providing a connection because they know that there's going to be a social trail established eventually, but they do need to amend their trails management plan before they can do that. There's also going to be some kind of question, I would imagine, as to who's going to actually have to pay for it. It's such a short distance. I'm sure we'll figure something out, but I just want to kind of keep you guys in the loop. This little section here will be added.
Is that the final map of the community? Is
No.
there really that green space in the middle like that?
There is a green space here in the
I
middle.
thought-
It's actually going to be irrigated native seed mix.
I just remember early on, we talked about that they were paying the city a certain amount because they weren't putting in some of the green space.
In lieu of, they're paying, it was $3,000 in lieu of. So this isn't a formalized park, so these homes will kind of back up to this
Yeah.
area. And it's
But it
just
is a green space within that community. That's nice.
native. So this company's kind of MO is more of that natural kind of prairie landscape. It was approved as that. That's not always my favorite, but with us not having to maintain it, I think ultimately we're all right with it. We do require that it needs to be established our standards within 2 years, or we won't accept it as a public improvement in town, and they have to kind of rip it out and keep redoing it. But did want to keep you guys in the loop on that because it's a trail that was approved in 2012 and it's even closer.
It'd be great if it did connect to Mayhopper Single Tree.
Yeah, I'm 190
190
confident.
feet, that's nothing.
I see the pros and the cons. I see the pros and I also see the cons to it. Like I said, I lived in this town 31 years. The community that I live in is beautiful, it's great. The trails that I see are great because I ride horses on them. I have cows that I graze on Boulder County open space, it's great. But it's also a hassle to keep agricultural livestock in on trails that's open. People leaving gates up there on the Mayhopper Trail chasing cows in at 2 or 3 in the morning on a 4-wheeler, it's not fun. It's not fun.
But do you honestly think though that if there's a 190-foot gap in between those two trails, that we won't get a social trail that's built in between the two?
I think, honestly, we can think about it. I think it would be there, but it backs right to the corner of my property. I hear people running and jogging on that trail all hours of the night. I'm not complaining or bitching about it. I still hear the coyotes yelping and yelling through town. They don't bother me. But if you think about it, when you go out at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, throw trash away in the trash can, and you see people jogging and yelling and screaming at 10 o'clock at night, that's kind of rude. I don't mind the trail being there, but let's have hours of operation on it. This trail is closed from 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning.
Sure, and maybe there just needs to be some signage about.
Absolutely, but how many people are gonna obey, the time period of close at 10 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning? 0. Maybe a few, handful. Like, when the flood wiped out the trail, there's people still going across that bridge. I know because we worked the flood. I was part of the flood irrigation crew. And they didn't care if they seen the sign that said trail closed. They still ran it, they still jogged it, they still biked it. They did not care one bit. I had a ditch cut in the middle of that trail. Can we zoom out, Patrick, please? I'll show you where I cut a ditch at to relieve the pressure from the downhill sides.
May not be
That's all you
helpful.
can get.
That's just.
That's all you can get.
Just a
But I cut a
picture.
trail, Mayhawker Trail, I cut a ditch about 6 foot, and I watched a guy try to jump it. 6 foot deep, and about, probably 4 feet wide, 5 feet wide, try to jump it.
Did
Hey,
he-
and the deal is that we had signs that said trail closed ahead at operation. So
Yeah.
pretty much, we had to have somebody monitor it and police it and tell people to go around, even though that there were signs up off of Coal Creek Drive.
So they're gonna.
So right there behind
Lindsay,
the
this is
storage?
that-
Yeah, no, absolutely, so,
Yeah,
right
this
here,
is that connection point.
right there's that connection point, so right there, you gotta think about, because there's irrigation water there too.
Yeah.
And you gotta think about building culverts too, because it's irrigation that fills our property.
Right, and my only point is, even if we don't build a connection, people will make a connection.
And that's why I think Boulder
Absolutely.
County is on board, you know, this,
Why don't we make a connection farther down the line? Why can't we?
yeah, and
I
I
mean,
think,
if you think
when
about
they
it,
do
let's
their
get the
environmental
people-
impact, they'll ultimately determine. It may not be as simple as just.
They'll look at the grading and irrigation.
Sure.
Well,
It's
right
pretty
there
wet, all that
is-
stuff.
It's pretty wet down there, it's pretty swampy down there. And, right there where that grade is, right there at the bottom, Patrick, go down to your south, right there, there's a ditch right there where it goes down on the railroad grade and rides the railroad grade and comes back down through the trail there. They put some culverts there. I know during the flood, that whole trail up on top would be
Yeah, it
the
was all
west side,
swampy.
it was all swampy. It all ran through, you know, and it's something you just gotta look at.
And we will probably need to look at, you know, how that interconnects.
Hey, I'm all for having trails and more trails, but let's be respectful about it, about other people's
Can you
well-being.
click the forward button real quick? There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, now go back. So it comes pretty much straight off of that circle, straight
Yeah.
down, and then it comes
Off the little
over.
corner
Yeah,
there.
and you also gotta think about, that's where our sewer line is too for our public works.
And that leg is, so what we, you know. and
I mean, honestly, we have a sewer break, we're gonna go out and tear up our open space and tear up part of our trails, because it does happen, water breaks do happen on trails. Prime example, behind the Horizons, we had a water break back in May, right? May or June, and a resident called and said, hey, the trail's flooding out, you got a gusher coming out of the bottom of the
So no
trail.
matter what, I mean, what they're putting in, for sure, is
Yeah.
on their property there.
Well,
They're
this
just gonna,
is-
is that theirs, or is that just total open
This
space?
is the town's. This is the town's open space here.
Okay, so they're just putting a trail out into
Yeah.
the open
But it is,
space,
I mean,
looping
it
back
was
around.
It was
It's
approved
approved.
in
It
the
is approved.
FPP, so this.
Yeah, and
It
it
is
loops
gonna
back
happen.
around into town,
Mhm.
so it's just a little interconnectivity there.
Yeah, it's just
And
to
then
help
it's,
people
and
access
then
that.
there's potentially a spur that's off of the southwestern edge to connect to the existing.
And then
trail.
really, you know, whatever we come to an agreement with Boulder County, that, you know, ultimately that's on there. We'll have to work with their management plan.
Are there any fences in there?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Barbed wire fence, high tensile fence too. As you can see down there, right where Patrick is, there's a high tensile fence there that's, how do I say, it's like pretty much an electric fence. Boulder County put in an electric fence to keep cattle out. And because a lot of people were complaining about the livestock getting down in the bottom of the creek beds. So they fenced that whole creek bottom to keep cattle and people out of the bottom of the creek bottom as
And
well.
and that stuff gets addressed in their management plan.
But any trail connection would have to go through a fence. That's my
Absolutely,
question.
absolutely.
So that's where you're saying you would want to make sure that it has some type of cattle guard.
Well, I'd say if we're gonna put a trail in and put that 190 feet trail, which Boulder County is probably gonna help us out with, let's be smart about it, you know, let's put more than a man gate there. Because those man gates get left open.
Yeah, the self-closing man gates and the new gates that they put on the other side of 93, that are like the cattle guards that you can ride
Yeah.
your bike over, those things are awesome.
Yeah.
That's right.
They're
The
not
gate
like
issue in Boulder County is,
Yeah.
it's
Kinda hard to believe.
it's an
They
interesting
disappear.
problem to watch.
Sometimes it's like that Mayhawker trailhead up there behind the Cuffners up behind us. Those gates have been stolen 4 or 5 different times. Just straight out take right off the hinges.
Who on earth would do that?
It's a bunch of college kids going around stealing a bunch of gates. And the deal is you'd be like, what the heck? No wonder why my cows would get down on the middle of the road at Coal Creek at 2 in the morning.
You'd be-
Because people are stealing the gates right off the hinges.
You'd be surprised how.
So I welded some better hinges on some posts up there.
But I'll keep you, right now, we don't have a construction timeline on that. They're behind on their, they're just behind in general. So I think
Did
trail.
they finish the house? Did they finish one yet? Did they finish one yet?
They're finished. We haven't issued.
I was gonna say, do you know how many are under construction or like?
Up there right now, are they finished right now up there? Are they done with the trails up there, or are they just getting started?
No, trail probably won't go in until next
Yeah,
year.
the houses don't even have COs, right?
We're not issuing COs until they get a little bit further on
Yeah, but
properties.
why are people moving in?
Did we do a temp CO?
I don't know, people are moving in.
There's a total of 3 people living over there, I know that much.
Yeah.
I think they were gonna
Absolutely.
do a temporary
And
CO
rental.
on maybe 1 or 2, well,
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm just saying, you also gotta think about, because that's where the sewer ties into, so let's make sure there's not a trail right over our sewer line, and we have a sewer break, and we gotta tear up our trail. Let's make sure it's offset on the easement wise. And there's manhole lids out there too.
I'm assuming all those things will be looked at before they approve.
I'm
where
assuming
it's
too,
at,
I hope
you
to,
know.
I'd hope to say so, but you never know how engineers think.
Oh, come on now. I'm not an engineer for that. I work with plumbing.
you play one on
You
TV.
play one on TV?
I play one on TV, yeah.
In your virtual
No,
world?
I just tell
You
them.
know what I will do, and I can summer, I owe you.
Does anyone want more? Do you know artists that you need to hand them out to?
I already got one. Earlier.
Got one earlier?
Yeah, now
they should have.
Did you get in the stream?
Are you gonna get some designs?
We, and I've already talked to
So it's kinda tough
the
to-
art teacher at Eldorado K-8, and she is advertising and, yeah. Yep.
So,
I've
I
tried.
just have to figure out how to get them into mine.
we're getting better at posting stuff online.
Thank you.
Any more races?
Gotta get.
No, I'm done for the season.
Good,
For next year,
good.
How's your trip?
Okay, it's gonna attack raccoons. You know what I thought?
I got me, that's 9,000 professionals all in parks and recreation, No, a lot of people from Oklahoma were there, though. Yeah, a lot of people from Oklahoma. But it was cool, like our keynote speaker was the Surgeon General, and you get to see, the head, the superintendent for New York City Parks and Rec, and you listen to the problems that those guys are dealing with, like, what do you do when you have thousands of people, like, living in your parks? So it's, you can actually.
I was gonna say, are these all still on?
So that part of it was kind of cool. And then just listening to, there's some people that, you think you come up with a creative idea every now and then, like on a construction project or something.
Yeah.
And then you listen to some of these people talk, and you're like, man, these guys. And you look at their budgets, like people, of course, Washington DC Parks and Rec.
You mean our budget's not bad? Come on.
Millions.
No,
Millions of dollars.
Help me out.
Hey, did you get that picture I sent you?
Yeah. Magley's, that's on Magley to deal with the.
Is he really gonna do it?
Yeah.
I tell you what, gets my witnesses on that.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
The whole South Pool, I wasn't here last month, so I'm just catching up. South Pool, did they actually do an analysis of what it looked like a little rendering, a little quick shot?
So,
Because I walked
Yeah.
out there afterward, and you said like the height and everything, and I was just comparing about the neighborhood, and I'm like, it'd be way too freaking tall.
so here's kind of,
They look horrible.
so we ran into a couple of things. One,
That was my big thing that I wanted when I left the previous meeting, was like.
so I have it. The group so quickly, and it was in the notes. I mean, there was a little bit of, we don't even want to continue on with it.
Yeah,
So here's kind of what we've got.
I just wanted to check it out.
I have it. Let me show it to you really quickly.
Because that's what everyone asks me for all the time. It's like, give me the image. I don't care about that flat plan that you're drawing there. Give me the image.
The other thing that we run into is they wanna charge us for the imagery. So we
Yeah.
work and work and work, you know.
Hey, I understand. I charge you for it too.
And also another deal we gotta look at is that when we pour these structures and these sunblocks, I guess you could probably say, because I'm being brought up to as well as my first meeting, is that there's a timeline when you pour concrete.
Oh, yeah.
There's a huge timeline. There's a
Yeah,
huge
we're talking
timeline.
winter here, you gotta be
Well, of course.
special additives.
Absolutely, and the deal is that concrete's gonna be more expensive yard right now in the winter, coming this winter, than it will be in the summertime.
Well, you'll get taxes and stuff on that one, right?
Yeah.
You know it, come on now.
And the other deal is you gotta think about, blank concrete piece that don't crack and chip.
That's the one I'm gonna shoot you this one.
It's all good, I'll check that out. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing with all these things, is, it's just the timeline to do it.
Of course,
And, like,
absolutely.
you can get a price, but then it's like, okay, now where's it fit, how's it fit, Oh,
Absolutely.
that's,
And I think availability for contractors would be
Oh my gosh.
pretty quick. I know.
Really? Which one do you want me to send?
Absolutely.
Your Gmail?
Yeah, what you know.
Yeah.
I try to isolate my work email.
Absolutely, I think, think about it, and it's pretty easy to.
I'm gonna shoot you this one.
Well, and,
My personal opinion,
see, I went and found my list of all my top playground items that I sent you back in June. After that last meeting, well, I was like, that playground analysis thing, after that last meeting, I went through and was like, why are we spending $35,000 on a shade structure when we could spend money on upgrade the multi-use fields? The pavilion in Purple Park is already underway, better utilization of the BBSD, El Dorado KA field. I'm like, that's a collaboration.
of course.
And then it was like, all the different little crap, but it was stupid stuff, like all of them asked to add shade trees. Yep. In every park. And then they were all like, the pea gravel and all that other
Of
stuff.
course,
And,
mulch and everything.
and that's just, that's so people can get in there and people have the accessibility. Little kids crawl into it and not have the 2-foot drop down in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, it's brutal.
I'm almost afraid of surfacing.
Are you really that scared about tackling the surfacing? Because I know what it's about, because I've worked it and I've been in there.
Yeah, the cost, because I know we're.
Come on, I can sharpen my pencil.
I know we're gonna have to drop those bids.
Why do you have to drop them?
Because, the latest revision of ADA is you have to have a 2-to-1 concrete slope. So our pits aren't deep enough, right, to get the accurate slope.
So pretty much you have to take it back to get your 2-to-1 slope, take it back or make it deeper.
So we're gonna have to, we can't go back, because most of them have existing sidewalk around it, so we're gonna have to go deeper. And most of those play pits
They're only about 4 or 5 inches deep.
See, and the other thing that we've kind of been dealing with
See,
is,
from my standpoint, ADA slope is all about how can I go shallower and not
Yeah.
have it so damn deep.
You would be.
Because like that's the, if it's more than 30 inches, you gotta have a guardrail, you gotta have
That's the
a
other-
landing in your ram.
That may
all
be
that
the other
ADA
thing,
crap.
if there's interest. If there's interest on PROSTAC for next year's work plan, like truly looking at the ADA accessibility. Did that thing come through?
Dude, those things are tall. Yeah, I got the first one. Oh, at least one.
Okay, it's janky.
I got.
Did you get the other one?
I didn't get the other one.
That's exactly what it was on my side.
It's all good.
I did get a little bit bigger, so yesterday. Oh, yeah. I did it from a boat barrel.
So I take it you've been in the construction industry for a while, or just know all this stuff,
Dude,
born into it.
I was born into it. I'm the guy that pushes the snow in this town.
I enjoy that, I appreciate it.
I hope you do.
I appreciate it
hope
because,
you do.
a couple years ago, I had a problem getting to my house, but lately it's like, the
Well,
uptake has been
well,
really great.
Well, here's the deal is that.
It used to snow every Friday on like about 8 inches, and that's like,
Here's the deal is that, we had a different contractor. We had a different contractor for the previous 4 years. My family's pretty much created this town.
Yeah.
My family's buried up there in the cemetery. So, I mean, the way that we gotta think about it is that, we got some different things going on. Martin slept a little bit. I mean, that meeting did not go as planned. So, I mean, all right.
Alright, I'm gonna set alarm.
the setup.